Many men have given up on love. Why do you think it's so?
Ooh, that is a great question. Why have a lot of men given up on love? I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One of which is the current dynamic between men and women. So there's a couple different ways I can answer this question, but one of the biggest things that I see is due to our society and the pressure we've been putting on both men and women to be a certain way, that has completely shifted the dynamic, the natural dynamic between the masculine and the feminine. It's completely destroyed polarity between us, and it's created a lot of contention and conflict. And so that has led to a lot of unsatisfying relationships. That has led to a lot of breakups, divorces, difficulty in dating. And so a lot of men are just getting tired, honestly. They're tired of doing the dating scene, of having it not work out, of being let down, of being, heartbroken just like women are. They just get tired and frustrated with the whole thing. Now, some of it is, their own actions and the way they're approaching dating and relationships. Like most of us, we were not taught properly, how to show up in a relationship, how to be, a good man, right? But also, there's a lot, like I said, a lot of pressure from society. Like society's basically telling you, you got to be this way, but this way isn't working. And so, because they haven't learned what the right way to be is, they literally don't know what they're doing. And they're just floundering around, not understanding why it's not working. And so, therefore, they get frustrated.
So I hope that today we can share some information on what is the way that can work for men. And Kevin, thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited for this conversation with you. So Kevin and I, we met, I think a few weeks ago when I was a guest on your podcast, The Love Lab. And Kevin, Kevin is a fellow sex, love, and relationship coach, but we really connected when we were recording the episode for you. We had such a good chat and we wanted to continue this. So this is me welcoming you to my community, and I really hope that everyone listening will be with us until the end. I have seen, Kevin, the wisdom that you have, the experience that you have, and I'm so excited to share this with the audience here. And I just want to say to everyone listening, you guys, I know that these days there's so many self-proclaimed coaches and experts of relationships. So something definitely that I really appreciate about you, Kevin, is that you actually have the training and the years of experience behind you. Like you've been doing this for over a decade. You're also a certified sexologist. Like me, you're trained in Tantra. That's also where we connected. You're an NLP practitioner. So there's actually background that comes to everything that you're sharing. And on top of this, you are a man. And I am very happy to bring a man into this channel and also share a man's perspective. So back to what you said, there's something you said that I really agree with. And it's like, what is the concept of being a man? How should you be as a man these days? Because that role has changed, and there's certain ideas that used to work and there's no more space for them. And I know a lot of men are confused and they try to go back to the old, but that's probably not going to happen. So trying to bring back the old, probably it's so, it's just it's not a solution because you'll be fighting the reality. But I think that really leaves a very important question. So if men's role has changed, and I think a big pain, and like you said, men are getting frustrated, is the fact that men don't feel needed the way they used to. And I often see comments on my channel that men feel like women don't need us, we're not needed by men. And so my question to you is, do you feel that this is true, that women do not need men at all? Or is this changing? What can men focus on to still feel and be needed by women?
Ooh, that's a great question. So, yeah, part of what's happening in society is this whole idea of I don't need a man. Like you hear this from women like, I don't need a man. I make my own money. Whatever. But as my wife used to say, she's like, I don't need you, but I want you. And so we're speaking to primarily men here, but if there happens to be any women watching this, the advice I would give to the women, just very briefly, is you may not absolutely need us. Like, society is now at a point where you can survive on your own just fine. But think about how much better the quality of your life would be if you welcomed a quality masculine man into it, right? So it's not that I need you for survival. It's that I want you in my life to increase the quality of my life. Okay, so that's on the women's side. Now on the man's side, if you're encountering women who are in that space of I don't need a man kind of space, honestly, I would just say don't date those women.
By
Look
the way,
for
sorry for
women.
jumping in. I say the same. It's like, man, you gotta be more selective. Like, is this the kind of woman you would actually want a relationship with, right?
Yeah, well, because if she's in that space of I don't need you, right? I to be in a relationship that works, you both have to give yourselves 100% to the relationship, and you have to open up 100% to this person and bring them into your life and create a relationship together. And if somebody is constantly in the space of I don't really need you, then they're never really going to open up fully into that relationship, and there's always going to be a conflict. And anytime you as a man try to assert yourself in the masculine role, you're likely to get pushback, right? And that's where you get this constant competing all the time. So there's 4 C's that my wife used to teach all the time women not to do. Complaining, criticizing, but competing is one of them. You're not supposed to be competing with your partner, right? Now, women have their places where they do things best, and we can really lean on them and rely on their abilities. And same thing with men. But if we're both constantly trying to do the same things all the time, we're literally competing with each other, and that never works well in a relationship. So men really need to, like you said, be more selective with the women they choose. Find a woman who is willing to let you in and willing to let you be the man in that relationship. Of course, that begs the question, well, what does it really mean to be a man in that relationship? How does that look, right? Because you made the point earlier that the old ways don't really work anymore. And that is true to some extent. Much of the old way doesn't work. However, what we've seen now in society is we've basically thrown the baby out with the bathwater, meaning that, yes, some of those old behaviors didn't work, but now we've just thrown all of masculinity out altogether and said, you can't do any of that stuff, right? Which leaves men go, well, then what do I do, right? They get confused. They're like, I don't know how to be. And we're actually asking men to be something that is not part of their core nature of who they are. So we're asking them to try to be something other than what they actually are. And that you're always going to fail at that. You're never going to be able to keep that up long term because it's not part of your core of who you are. So what we see in society is an over masculinizing of women and an over feminizing of men. And what happens is when you take a feminine woman and make her more masculine and a masculine man and make her more feminine, you both end up in the center where you're nothing. You're really neither, right? There's zero polarity there whatsoever. So, for men, we need you to not succumb to societal pressure. But when you are stepping up as a man, we need you to do it in a way that is actually going to work in today's society. So you will hear a bunch of other teachers out there talking about, some will call it the evolved masculine, some will call it the enlightened masculine. I like to use the term integrated because evolved and enlightened, I think, has a little bit of I don't know,
Yeah, it just
elitist
can
sort of,
sound woohoo or something. Yes, yes,
yeah,
yes.
So, but I
Cultish.
like I like to use integrated because what the point that I'm trying to get across is, and I don't know if you've ever studied any of Ken Wilber's work. Ken Wilber is modern day
Not as much. I'm
philosopher.
familiar, but not as much.
So Ken Wilber has this idea that he calls transcend and include. So if we think about that in terms of our own personal development, what does that mean? Okay, I'm not the same person I was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Certainly not the same person I was 30 years ago, right? So, but that person that I was, there's parts of that are still here that still make up who I am. In other words, who I am today, I didn't completely let go and forget of everything that I used to be. I take those good parts of that, right? The things that worked for me, right? I leave the things behind that didn't work, and then I add new things in. So I'm transcending who I was, but also including parts of who I am, right? And so it's kind of this same idea when I talk about the integrated masculine. You're transcending the old way of being masculine, but you're also including the good parts. We're keeping the baby, we're throwing out the bathwater, right? And then we're pouring some new water in the tub.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the idea. It's like, what are the qualities that were good from the old way of being masculine, right? Well, there's lots of them. Uh, we keep
Yeah,
our
what are
word.
they?
Well, we keep our word, right?
Mm.
We are the protector, right? So we are the physically bigger, stronger uh, uh, of the two sexes, right? And so it is our job to protect our woman and protect our family. That's a good quality, right? Even being provider, like we look down on that now, but being a provider is a good masculine quality. That is something that we are designed by nature to do. Now, that doesn't mean that we necessarily have to provide 100% of everything, right? That doesn't mean that she needs to stay home barefoot, pregnant in the kitchen. That's not what that means. But it means we do have to provide. We have to at least
Yes.
provide for our family. And that provision can be money, but it can be other things too, right? It doesn't have to be just money. Maybe we provide a safe space. Maybe we provide a home. Maybe we provide, I don't know, the ability for her to get out of the house and work, right? There's ways that we can provide things and still be in that provider role. So there's things like that that are important as a man. And here's the thing. We talked earlier also about how men don't feel needed anymore, right? But if we are able to provide, if a woman creates space and allows us to step up and provide in whatever ways we're capable of providing, we then feel needed. And the problem is that a lot of these women, I don't need you. I don't want you to do. I'm capable of doing that myself. And as my wife used to say all the time, she would say, I know that I am perfectly capable of doing this, but I like it when you do it.
Oh, that reminds me actually. So when I was still living in the tantric community, we spoke about it also on your podcast, as in when I lived in a sex cult. But I remember there was this one guy, and I think it was something with my cat. I just got a kitten, and she was sick, and I was so scared that she was going to die. And this guy looks at me and he says, "I know you can deal with this on your own, but you don't have to." And I loved it. And I think this is one of those small transitions that, see, I feel like a lot of the problems in our society comes from the fact that we became too direct, too black and white, and we're missing the nuances. So what is the difference? In the past, the reason why man was stepping up was because a woman was not either capable or she was not allowed to do something, right? So it's like, let me take care of you because you are not able to do it. These days, it's what you said. It's not that I'm not able to do it. I am, but it's still nice when you step up and assist me or you do this for me. And I want to go back to something you said. I actually never phrased it this way, but um, we have two types of needs to survive and needs to thrive. And I think in the past, a relationship was meeting our needs for survival. These days, relationships meet our needs for thriving, which means, like you said, I don't need a man. Like I'm gonna survive without a man. But to thrive, to have a really high quality life, yeah, that's what I do need, a good man by my side. So if we can just switch this, it's like instead of looking at it that you need a woman who's desperate and unable to be on her own, pick a woman totally who is able to be on her own. She's going to be an easier partner also, but a woman who wants to thrive and who recognizes this concept that with a man on her side, she gets to thrive. So I
Yes,
really like this.
that's absolutely true, and it's a really wonderful way of putting it. I don't need you to survive, but I need you to thrive. And what is interesting from a man's point of view is, and I don't know, this may have been different. I wish my grandparents were still alive because I'd love to ask this question. But I know in today's world, if a woman literally is not capable of surviving without me, if I have to do every little thing, that to me is exhausting and annoying. Like, I actually don't want a woman that is so dependent on me that I got to handle everything. And yet at the same time, I also don't want a woman who's so independent and strong-willed and I don't need a man that she won't let me do anything. So a balance in the middle somewhere is very nice.
So I love that you mentioned this because, of course, one of the things that we hear, and I'm sure you've seen this online yourself a lot, is men men want a woman who will submit to them. They want this element of submission. And I kind of challenge this because I'm like, do you understand what it means when someone submits to you? It means you have responsibility for that person. It's like having a child. I don't have children, but it's exhausting, right? It like you said, it takes a lot of work. So it's not about having a woman who needs you, because unless you give direction, she's totally lost and confused. She, like you said, she needs to be able to take care of herself, right? Because this gives you space that when you provide for her, you don't do this because you have to, you do it because you want to. And it really changes this dynamic. And like you said, there will be moments when you want to lead, but there are other times when you just want to rest. And it's nice to flip it and have occasionally your woman take care of you, right? So we need, in my opinion, we want both partners to be independent, but for both people to recognize the value of polarity and who can consciously bring polarity into their relationship. I personally believe that we don't need to, nor should we be in polarity all the time. Let's say, when it comes to doing all the bills, taxes, etc. I mean, I think it's nice for a man to be able to share some of those responsibilities. But when it comes to romance, right? I don't know, your weekly dates, that you have space dedicated to you being a romantic couple. And this is where you consciously step into that polarity so that you can keep it up.
Yeah, for sure. There are going to be moments in any healthy relationship where, polarity will shift a little bit here or there, sometimes due to necessity, sometimes because you want to, for sure. Um, and in those moments where you're connecting, you want to make sure that you have that polarity. So, nothing, it's like you said, nothing is ever 100% black or white, right? Like, it's just, life isn't like that. So while in general we want to keep the polarity, as masculine and feminine poles, so that there's that draw, that pull there are times when that'll shift a little bit, and that's perfectly okay. So don't I would caution men, don't get so dogmatic about it that it absolutely has to be 100% masculine and feminine, polarity all the time. Like you mentioned taxes. I mean, my wife and I ran the business together. We absolutely split the duties of taxes. When we started the business, I initially taught her how to do the accounting for it, how to run the ledger and do that. And every year at the end of the year, she would compile all the data, give it to me. I would organize it, go through it all, and then I would deal with the tax accountant to get it done. Right. So there was a sharing of duties right there. And it was great. I really appreciated having her help with that. It sucks having to do it all now myself. but I want to come back to something else you said also, which was the notion of having the woman sort of submit to the man. I think the big problem with that word is the definition of what it means to actually submit. Because you are hearing that term used a lot today in the polarity teachings. A woman must submit to her man, and men, you got to find a woman that will submit to you. It really depends on what your definition of submit means. So when polarity teachers, at least the good ones anyway, there are some not so good ones out there, but when the good ones say submit, they don't mean submit like a full-time slave. This is not what they're talking about when they say she should submit to you. What they are talking about is she needs to let go and let you take the lead. Now, that doesn't even mean 100% of the time. It just means, a lot of the time, create the space to relax into your feminine and allow your man to step up and actually be the man and do that role. That's what we mean by submit in the polarity world, at least if we're teaching it correctly. Because the problem is, if you're not doing that, if you're not creating the space for him to step up, one, Some men will continue to step up anyway, but now you're in that we're competing with each other again, right? But the other thing that you will see, especially in men who are not as firmly in their masculine, is they'll actually retreat and sink back, right? And now they're not stepping up and competing with you, right? Which is bad enough. Now they're just sinking into the background and not stepping up at all, which creates massive resentment from the woman. And the further he sinks back, the further she's going to step up into that masculine role. And, she'll do it because she can. You will see this all the time. You see this with single moms. You see this with, women who haven't been in a relationship for a long time. They have no problem stepping up, putting the pants on, putting the jacket with the shoulder pads in, and, getting stuff done. But the reality is that if they're in a relationship and they have to do that all the time, they're going to be resentful because they don't actually want to do that all the time. It prevents them from really sinking in and relaxing into their more natural feminine space. And there's a quality of life that they miss out on when they can't be in that feminine space. And a lot of women, they won't actually even necessarily they won't phrase it like that. They won't tell you I'm missing out on the quality of my life because when I'm in my feminine, I get to go inward and I get to listen to my intuition more, and I get to nurture, and they won't actually say it. They'll just go, I'm pissed off, or I'm angry, or I'm so frustrated.
Or give you silent treatment.
Or give you silent treatment, right? So that's what you'll hear. But what's underneath that is, I don't want to have to be the man for you. You are supposed to be the man, right?
Yes, I think this is really important. So I am right now single and I also have my own business. So there's a lot of things I need to take care of. And it means I'm stepping into the masculine energy. And honestly, there are moments when I just feel overwhelmed. And it's not that I work a lot. Trust me, I don't. People think I work so much. I'm like, "Oh, I work just the hours I do." But the fact that I have to be taking care of everything, it's like it's mental load, emotional load. And it's a lot. And what I miss is this ability to be able to lean on someone. So, yes, when we are in a relationship, we want that. But here is, for example, where I feel men are sometimes forgetting is that being in the, let's say, leader's position in a relationship, like having a woman surrender to you or submit to you. By the way, I fully agree with you. The definitions, I think people are confusing the definitions of these words. But in order to have this for all the men, it's not your birthright. It's something you work for.
You have to earn it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's in a way you're stepping, you could say, into a position of a CEO. No one just gets this position in a company. You have to work for it and you have to prove that you're good for this. Because here's something that men, I find, often forget. Men, it's like almost like men want a woman who will be naive because trust is earned. If I meet a guy and let's say, and I've had this by the way, with like my ex, um, we were living in Thailand, so we're on a scooter, and he was upset with me because he said that I didn't trust him as a driver. And I said, no, I don't trust you as a driver because so far I haven't seen enough to be able to know that you're good on a bike. And hey, I have a motorcycle license and you don't. So far, why would I trust you? If I just surrender to you because you want to, it means I would be naive and rather stupid. So also I think it's important to recognize that that polarity is something that you work on. A woman is not meant to just right away surrender to you just because you're a man. You have to prove to her that you actually can be in this position. It's not a birthright. It's something you have to develop and earn.
Yeah, well, I think so. We were talking about the whole transcend and include thing, and like, what are some of the old ways that don't serve us anymore? That expectation comes from that old way because in the past, that's how it was. You were the man, and the woman was just expected to trust you and follow your lead. And yes, I think in today's society, that doesn't really work anymore, and that it's rather than expecting it, you just need to demonstrate it. You need to demonstrate it. Now, I will say that, in the case that you shared, you could give him a certain amount of trust in the beginning, unless he's, showing you that he's really quite dangerous on a bike. but there could be like a certain amount of like, okay, I trust you to a point, and then as he shows that he is a good driver on a bike and safe, and is not going to do anything intentionally to risk your safety, then of course you would open up a whole lot more and trust him more. But yeah, I think that whole expectation comes from the old way of being.
Mm. Yes, and I think this is one of, like you said, these old things that would be great if they could change. And the other one that I want to go back to that you mentioned is different ways how you can provide. And I think so. In my approach, I love talking about energies and chakras. And one of the things I talk about is how chakras in the male and female body, they're opposite, like they're charged up in an opposite way. So where a man gives, a woman receives, and where a woman gives, a man receives. And so I think an interesting place is our throat chakra, which is responsible for our expression. Not just the words that I say, but basically the energy that I project into the world. Now, at the level of throat, men are giving and the woman is receiving. And there are these moments, and I don't know if you as a man ever look at these things. Like I, as a woman, I always notice this, but sometimes you have these photos from some red carpet events. So you have women really dressed up, and you'll have these couples where she's so beautiful, and he stands next to her, and he literally looks at her, and you can see that he's so proud of her. He's like, "This is my woman. She's stunning," and it's like with his energy he creates this space for her, like this kind of like a pedestal for her. World, look at her. This is my woman. This is my goddess. And here, this is not about the money that you make, right? It's not about like cleaning the house. It is literally the energy. And when I see this in a man, when I see these photos, and you can see it in his eyes, it's one of the sexiest, most beautiful thing that I see. Literally, you're just holding her, right? You're basically giving her space to shine as a woman.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, honestly, as a man, why would I want to be with a woman I didn't feel that way about, you know? Yeah, as men, we absolutely want to be proud that this is our woman. Look at her. She's beautiful. She's amazing. She's sexy. She's smart. She's, all these things, right? Absolutely. It's funny. I used to get, and I still do, get those comments on videos that my wife and I used to do together. That people will comment all the time, like, "Look at the way they look at each other. You can see it in their eyes." Yeah, of course you could.
Yes, I think it's the best compliment, and I would say if in your relationship you stop looking at each other like this, then you gotta be looking at something. Okay, so back to the conversation about men kind of giving up on love and feeling frustrated, and to a degree, absolutely rightfully, like having a reason to get frustrated. And so, just like we have a lot of this, women saying, "I don't need a man," I see a lot of this among men as well. And I'll tell you, it was a bit of like an eye-opening moment for me, because my girlfriends keep sending me all these like reels and shorts where like women say like, "Oh yeah, I've been single for like 4 years, 8 years, and happier than ever," right? And there's this whole kind of movement like, men kind of cause trouble, so we're just gonna be single. And I got a comment under one of my videos for men, and this man said, "I've been single for 4 years." And another man commented, "Congratulations, I've been single for 12." And it was my first time actually witnessing the exact same conversation that you have among women happening between men. And so I am curious about your perspective. Do you think that men are better off being single these days? Or do you think that men benefit from being in a relationship?
I 100% feel that men benefit from being in a relationship. I think that the quality of life when two people come together in a healthy relationship is significantly higher than when it is just you yourself. Now, having been in a relationship with the woman that literally was the love of my life, and losing her and being single now, I found a way to be comfortable just being me, doing my own thing, and still finding ways to enjoy life. But there is absolutely something missing from life without, that just amazing, beautiful, rock solid partner. I think that the response that we're seeing from men and from women is really a coping mechanism to deal with the fact that they aren't able to find that kind of a relationship. And so they just say, well, all the experiences, all the relationships I've had were disasters and they just added more stress to my life. So therefore, I'm better off without it. But I'm telling you, if you ever had a quality relationship with a good woman, you know how it absolutely transforms life for the better.
I love what you just said, and honestly, so this has been my experience and a bit of my personal journey. I got out of a relationship that, once you're out of a toxic relationship, it's like poof, you're like, oh my god, it's like I was under a spell, and it's like you almost don't even recognize reality. And so moving on from that was very painful, and I needed my time to heal. And then I had some other stories. Like one of the stories is that I realized I'm actually into women. So then there was this one woman that I really liked, and I really wanted to give it a try. And I got all the crazy lesbian drama from this, like no benefits. So I was like, okay, maybe I'll just drop it. But there's a lot of these different things happening, and I started kind of also I was living in Bali at that time, and I was going to this CrossFit gym where you have like men just having bodies like Greek gods, and I started actually feeling invisible. It was like the first time in my life that I, as a woman, felt invisible. No one was hitting on me. Like I just felt like nothing. And I started just learning to be okay being single. It's like what you said, you know, this is my situation. Let's make the most of it. Like, I do believe that the relationship status shouldn't determine whether we are happy or not. We should be happy regardless. But recently I had a bit of like a aha moment, and I was listening to this audiobook by Matthew Hussey, his latest book, and he talks about like having kids, so like a different conversation. But here's this awesome concept, and he says you have your plan A, and you have your plan B, and when plan A doesn't happen, you move on to plan B, but you don't look at it as a like oh gosh, because my plan A didn't happen, so now I have to do plan B. He says no, when you enter the plan B, you make this your plan A. It's like you make the most of it to the point where you're wondering, why would I ever want plan A? And so I realized that when it comes to dating, I stepped into plan B, and I totally made it my plan A. I'm so happy. I'm really really happy, thriving. But then I had this awareness. I'm like, why did I conclude that plan A was no longer available? And it's literally what you said, because I fell a victim to this, of just saying I'm okay single, because that was my coping mechanism for the fact that with age, I'm now 38, I'm not getting as much attention as I used to, and I'm struggling to find someone that I would really want to go deep with. And so, yes, it's a way to protect ourselves from the pain that I wish I had someone and I don't. And I think it really takes radical honesty to admit it to yourself that actually, no, not all women, not all men are horrible. No, it's not that we don't need a relationship, it's that I struggle to find it.
Yeah. Can I flirt with you for just a moment?
Hmm.
You are still so young and so beautiful. I find it really hard to believe that you're not getting the attention that, that you used to.
I do appreciate it. To be fair, I do see this is something really crazy. I do see that so much depends on energy, and I believe this is true for men and women. It's like we can activate it, and then we're seen, and we can shut it down, and we're not visible. It's yes, the way you dress and everything, sure, it matters. And by the way, I actually did also want to ask you about this, so we're going to get there in a second. But I do feel that this doesn't matter as much as we think. Like I have totally been crazy about men who, like, objectively speaking, were not very attractive, or also men that I didn't find attractive for a long time. But then it was just being around them and their energy that I was just like, I don't know. There's just something about them. I really feel chemistry with them. So I do think absolutely that a lot of it is energy. Um, but yes, that brings me to the question I wanted to ask you. So of course we live in times of dating apps, and one of the common um, let's say, what a problem with dating apps is that for men, because it's so visual, a lot of men just don't get picked, right? So they don't get swiped. Was it right or left? Sorry, I don't use the apps. I don't actually know which way you're meant to
I don't
accept
use them
someone.
either, but I've interviewed a whole bunch of experts on it, so I think I have
So,
some stuff I could share here.
okay, so I think it's swiping. See, I don't know. Okay, well, basically, like accepting. So basically, men do feel like it's a bit of an unfair field for them because they don't get picked on dating apps. So I wonder, especially if you're saying that you interviewed a lot of people on this, what would be some of the tips and advice for men who struggle with dating apps and so they don't really know how to meet women?
Yeah, I hear a lot of struggles from both men and women on the dating apps. I mean, I know dating apps these days are kind of like the number one way that people are out there dating. And yet, every person I talk to personally about it shares that they struggle with it, that they've bounced from app to app to app, that they go through all the available matches and there's nothing there that's interesting to them. So it's a common struggle, is the point. Now, one thing I have noticed with men, this is a little different than the way women approach the dating apps, but I have noticed that the men tend to not do a very good job of marketing themselves on these dating apps.
I agree. I agree. Yes, let's help them market themselves well on apps.
So, first of all, most of them just the photos are terrible. They're just like they're like a bad, cell phone photo snapped with their buddy in the background or something, and it's like, you know, if you're looking for a quality woman, show her who you are through photos, right? So if you're successful in your business, show her a picture of you, I don't know, maybe in your business or maybe an award that you won where you were, being, honored for something, or I don't know, just do a better job of using high quality photos, but photos that show who you actually are, not super, here's another thing guys do a lot of the time because they're aware of this problem. They post a photo that's 10 years old. And it's like, you don't even look like that anymore, right? So, relevant photos, but that are high quality, that show things about who you are. That's a great start, right? And it's just, I'm amazed at how many times men don't do that. They just like, let me see what I got on my phone here. I got this photo from when we were fishing, It's like,
Yes, yes.
wait, what? At least, at very least, get a friend that can take decent photos or has something other than a cell phone and have put on a nice shirt, groom a little bit and have them take a nice photo. That's a good start. The
Yes.
second thing
Let
I
me
see, go
can I
ahead.
jump in here just with the photos? So um, I'm with you. So I do believe that men don't fully understand like the visual aspect, as in get get some kind of styling done. I mean, don't be like ready for a professional photo shoot, but like you said, a nice shirt, like look nice, look smart. Like just make sure you look good, present yourself. And the other thing that I often get confused about, and I don't quite understand why men do it, is when they post a photo with a girl, because then I'm confused.
If you're on a dating site, you absolutely should not be posting photos with another woman in them because you're right. Then the women are confused. Is he with someone? Is he not with someone? Is he a swinger? Is he poly? Is like, what's going on? Is he looking for a unicorn? Like, I don't get it. I don't know.
Yes. Okay. So these are the photos. Okay. What else would you say?
So yeah, photos, of course. Well, part of the problem, just to briefly touch on the photo thing again, part of the problem with the photo issue is that a lot of these men actually don't really dress nice day to day, right? So they're just, this is how I normally look, and it's like, oh, that's a problem. And a lot of times men get friends, they're like, I got to put all this work in and blah blah blah, and it's like, you don't have to put a lot of work in. It's actually not that hard. In the men's world, it's easier to look nice than it is in the women's world because we have far fewer choices. Like, we don't really have very many options. Like, you could have a pair of like dress pants, khakis or jeans. Like, you got three options. Like, anyway. if you do a little bit better job day to day of dressing nice and presenting yourself nicely, it will be much easier to have good quality photos. Okay, so there's that. The second thing is, I don't see a lot of men doing a good job in really asking for what they want and when they're writing their descriptions, right? So a lot of times, people want to, put on sort of like, this is who I am, kind of thing. And it's like, it's a bit pretentious, honestly, because it's trying to, put on your best, show as much as you can, but they don't really do a good job of being real in it and saying, here's who I am, here's what I do, and here's what I'm looking for in a woman, and being really honest about that stuff. So, how you craft what you write in there is really, really important. And then, back to something that we talked about earlier, is because men are frustrated, and they sort of get in this desperation mode sometimes, they will often say yes to potential matches and partners that, if they were really honest with themselves, they would know are not right for them, right? So it's that idea of choosing better. So doing a better job of presenting yourself, but then also doing a better job of weeding through and choosing out the ones that you think really do have potential. Now, in all of this discussion about dating apps, I have to also say my number one recommendation is to just do what we used to do. Like, I, I'm
To get
old.
off the apps. That would be my number
when
one
when I
recommendation.
was dating, there were no apps. They didn't exist, right? So we did things the old-fashioned way. We went out and we did stuff. We went to friends' parties. We went out. We just got out and met people. And my recommendation always is, go out and do the types of things you like to do, not the types of things that you think that's where the women are going to be. In other words, if you think, well, going out to a dance club is where I'm going to find all the beautiful looking women, but I don't really like to dance and I don't really like to go to clubs, but that's where the women are. So that's where I'm going to go meet all the women. It's like, okay, yeah, there might be a bunch of women there, and you might meet one who's really beautiful. And you know what she's going to want to do every weekend? Go out to dance clubs, right? That's not going to work for you if that's not your thing, right? So go do the types of things that you want to do. I mean, I met a long time girlfriend when I was younger, in a yoga class, right? Just going to my gym and going to a yoga class. I've met, I was, and still am, not as much as I used to be, but I used to be really into rock climbing, and I've climbed all around the world. And I had this huge group of friends that were climbers, and I met a woman through climbing. Actually, met more than one woman through climbing, right? So going out there and just doing the types of things that you love to do and being your authentic self, that's a big key. Being your authentic self, not putting on a pretense for people. That is honestly the best way to meet a woman.
So I love this. So like you guys are not gonna see pretty much any content about using apps on my YouTube channel because I don't use them and I don't like them. It's like I'm such a big fan of meeting people organically, and I feel that we have almost lost this skill. And then with more technology and AI, it's even, you know how before we're talking about this coping mechanism. I'm fine single because it's hard for me to admit that I actually want someone. It's a little bit similar here. Oh, I don't have social skills, and I could either try to rebuild them, which is going to be a little difficult, or I could go deeper into technology so I never ever have to face the fact that I am terrified of speaking to people in real life. So, something I give my clients, I work a lot with men who are single and they want to meet someone. And look, I do understand that this is, it's not all that easy. Not everything depends on us. There's a part of the equation that is in our control and a part that isn't. But I always tell them, just ask women out, not in a romantic way, but like just talk to more women, ask them for coffee so it becomes normal and natural. We are social creatures. Like we know how to connect, we know how to talk to other people, we just stop doing it. So now it feels scary. But I'm fully with you on this one. Like go out. I even have like one of my recent videos. I think it's called something like, is dating a numbers game? Because some people say, oh, you just need to go out and meet a lot of people. And instead, what I claim is just like, it's more about the energy that you're in when you meet people. Like you said, do things that you really like. It changes your energy, makes you more attractive, more magnetic. And yeah, you have more opportunities of meeting someone with whom you're going to be aligned. So I'm fully with you on this one.
Yeah, the perfect example of that is that, I kind of said earlier that, I was single and I actually am seeing somebody, but, it's still relatively early on in the relationship. And due to our geographic location, it's not that she's super far away, but I don't get to see her all the time. So I still spend a lot of time on my own by myself most of the week. So that's why I kind of phrased it that way. But the reason I bring this up is because how did I meet this person? Technically, I've known her for years, but I hadn't seen her in years either. Well, after my wife died, I really didn't go out and do stuff much at all. And I was aware of the fact that I was really not getting out there and not really doing stuff. And a friend of mine was having a birthday party and he was having it down on the beach. And I knew the weather wasn't going to be particularly good, but I was like, I just, I need to get out of the house. Like, so I forced myself to get out of the house and go do something social. I knew I was going to know at least a decent amount of people there and just get out and do something. And sure enough, she's there and it's like, oh my God, I haven't seen you in years. Oh my God, I haven't seen you in years. Right. And from there, we just got talking. I said, hey, if you'd like to go to the beach, maybe we should go to the beach sometime. It's nothing like it wasn't, I want to ask you out on a date. It was just like, hey, why don't you come hang out with us on the beach? And that's how it happened. And that's the old fashioned organic way of
I mean,
meeting
so,
people.
speaking about these old patterns that we could actually still keep, that would be one of them, like actually meeting people.
Right, exactly. Face to face, having conversations. Yeah.
And look, I'll say this. I feel that if we don't work on these in-person interactions, then you may have a great profile on a dating app, but then comes the date and you suck at this date because you forgot how to be with another person. You're very stressed, you're not yourself, and you lost your chance because like you were not able to hold just a normal human conversation. So I still think it's really helpful to go out and like you said, you don't have to be asking women out on a date. Just like what I actually do, and I do ask men out, but the way I do it, it's like, hey, you want to grab coffee? As in it's an intentional, just like, I like your energy, let's just get to know each other better. Zero hidden agendas. It's like, let's just hang out and see. So the stakes are very low. And I think this is something we could really be practicing for both men and women. Just ask each other out, hang out, and see. And then if something, happens out of it, great.
Yeah. I'm a huge proponent of that. And you reminded me of one other thing that I really wanted to share when it comes to dating and the apps. I see a lot, and this goes for both men and women. I see a lot of people when they're on the dating apps, or even once they get off the apps when they're communicating with somebody, that the majority of their communication is via text message. This drives me crazy because text messaging is missing a ton of extra information. When we communicate with somebody, the actual words are only a small part of the communication. There's facial expressions. You can feel energy and intention. You can hear inflection in the voice, right? There's a ton of extra information that lets you know what it is this person is trying to communicate that doesn't come across via text messages. And man, I've been coaching women in this group with which is a partnership with another group of coaches, and I hear this every single day in this group. They're like, well, he said blah, blah, blah. Wait a minute. Was that in a text message? Well, of course. Yeah, we always text. I'm like, well, then you don't even know what he actually meant by that. Right. So I just bring that up because we're talking about online dating. And it's like, if you really want to get to know somebody and you really want to understand who they are, you have to have at least this kind of face to face or at least telephone. You need to hear their voice. You need to see their face. Obviously, that's easy if you're going out and doing it the old fashioned way. But if you are still going to be on the dating apps, like, you know, chat in the messaging apps, inside the apps, or potentially text message just enough to get to know whether or not this is somebody you are interested in getting to know more. And once you've decided that you're interested in getting to know them more, get on a phone call, get on a Zoom call or a FaceTime or whatever, video platform you use and actually see this person and talk with them.
Totally. And also, let's remember that I think we've all been there. You know, when you're like spending 10 minutes to craft the perfect message.
And then it still gets misunderstood and taken out of
Yes.
context. Yeah.
And but it's
Hmm.
exactly my point. It's like what you like the message you get from me, it's not something that I would spontaneously tell you in person. Because I'm really thinking of what I wanna, how I wanna come across, in what way I wanna impress you. And so absolutely there's a lot of miscommunication. But again, I think sometimes people stay on the apps and like they just keep swiping both ways because it gives us the boost of confidence. Because you're like, oh, another match, and we can waste so much time on the apps. Just like you're scrolling up and down on your Instagram. Here, scroll back and forth, and it's a time killer. But I love this. This is like totally not from relationships. I think it's from the book Atomic Habits. I want to say it was this book, but he talks about the difference between doing something and getting something done. You're not on the app to be on the app. You're on the app to find someone. And so if you spend like an hour or more every day on the app, but you're not actually meeting someone, that you're doing something wrong. But I think a lot of people are scared because it's much safer to hide behind the screen, because once you meet someone, the real you will show. And we're so scared. And again, I honestly strongly believe that we have to spend more time with people offline more, because you have to also realize that the way you are is enough. Because maybe for the app, or like you have to, like we're talking, like, yeah, you do have to present yourself well, but you may feel like, oh, in real life, I don't really dress like this. Would then just be in real life and keep showing people who you are and get confidence, in how to be yourself.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Of course, always be yourself. That's a huge part, without
Sounds
a
so
doubt.
simple, right? Yes. Um, so I have another question to you. So you've worked with a lot of couples, a lot of men and women, and one of the things that I still see is that men are really confused about women. My intention with a lot of content on this channel is to help men understand how women operate. But I'm curious, you, as a man and as a coach, what was like the biggest kind of surprise, aha, shock moment? Like that you learned something about women and you're like, wait, what? From a man's perspective.
Oh man, that's a good question. All right, first I'll start by saying I completely agree with you that most men fundamentally misunderstand women, without a doubt. And this is a huge part of the work that I do with men too. Is like, guys, there's a few just basic concepts about how women operate and what they want that you need to know that you are very obviously not understanding. Uh, some of those things would be a lot of what we've talked about today about how, for instance, women stepping up and being in their masculine, not being something necessarily that they really want to do all the time. The fact that they want to be able to relax more into their feminine. A lot of men don't understand that. The fact that she wants him to actually step up and be that role. The fact that he needs to actually earn the respect of being the king in the relationship. These are all things that are very key and fundamental to a woman that most men just don't get at all. Like they have no concept of that. So there's a lot of really what I would consider basic things about like here's how a woman operates, and it's kind of what blows my mind. If you really want to know what blows my mind is that most men have spent years of their lives dating women, being around women, being in relationships with women, and they still haven't figured out some of these patterns. It's like, okay, yes, I do this for a living. I've read a lot of books on it. I've interviewed a lot of people. But honestly, the majority of what I learned was trial and error, was through my own relationships, right? And why didn't this one work? And what was she looking for in this one? And I don't get it, right? And like figuring it out and talking to other women, like, well, why did she do this? I don't. So I learned a lot of that, which is how I actually ended up doing this for a living. I never intended to be a coach, but because I had kind of cracked the code, people started asking me like, well, teach me how to do it, right? And so then the formal study came later on, right? But like, it blows my mind that a lot of men just keep repeating the same patterns over and over and over again and never really learning the lessons from them, never really learning that there are some really core things that women want. Now, I will say also that our society, again, is kind of telling men that some of those core things aren't actually real when indeed they are real. So when we're talking about masculine feminine dynamics and what she's really looking for in a relationship, modern society is like, now that's all old toxic masculinity stuff, throw it all out, baby
And
with the
also,
bathwater.
some women will also say it, which I also find interesting, how women will fight for these things again as a coping mechanism because it may be very difficult for them to admit that they desire it. So yes, it is true. There is a lot of like messages out there who are trying to convince men otherwise. Yeah.
Yeah, but don't be gaslighted by it, man. Like the reality is what your own experience is, right? There's a perfect example of this as far as like your own experience and learning from it. So years ago, like many years ago, I was in a relationship with this woman, and I noticed that sometimes when we had sex, it was amazing and it worked really well. And other times when we had sex, it just didn't work. It felt like we were wrestling, like, like this was competitive wrestling or something.
And not the good wrestling.
Not the good wrestling. No, not the good wrestling. And it took me a while to figure out what was going on. And then one day I was like, oh, it's like a light bulb went off. And I'm like, I get it. I finally figured out why this is happening. So I'm going to try an experiment. I'm not going to tell her what I'm doing. I'm just going to make a shift myself, and I'm going to see what happens. So I made the shift, and from then on, sex was always good. What was the shift I made?
I want to know what was this?
What was the shift I made, and what was the thing that really changed? Okay, so what I noticed is, so this woman happened to be particularly like a woman who was pretty much in her masculine. Like she, from a very young age, she had to take care of her siblings and, just everything in her life. She was like, I'm a doer, get stuff done, like in her masculine energy a lot. That didn't necessarily create a problem because generally I was very much in my masculine also. So I could basically just out masculine her, right? But there were times where I would be tired, I would be just, whatever. And I would let go a little bit. I would relax a little bit. I would not be constantly trying to out masculine her. And that's when things weren't working. So what I noticed is the times when we would get together for sex where I didn't just take charge, like grab her, throw her on the bed and be like, okay, here's what we're doing. The times where I didn't do that, that's where it felt like the bad kind of wrestling. Like it just didn't seem to click and it just didn't seem to work. But if I was like, even if I was super, and this was part of the experiment, I was like, I don't care how tired I am. I don't care how much I don't feel like being on top. Like I'm going to just do it because I'm going to see what happens. And when I started doing that, taking more charge in the bedroom, even when I was exhausted and didn't want to take charge, the whole dynamic shifted. And so I was like, wow, that's really amazing. So I realized what was happening there was a polarity issue, in that when I was not stepping up strong enough in my masculine, we ended up basically competing with each other. So a few months go by, I'm like, I've figured this out. Like I got to keep with it, right? So we go to this talk, which is this, I wish I could remember his name because he used to be fairly well known in the space, but he's an Italian guy who was teaching polarity stuff 15 years before polarity stuff was really like in the space, in the conversation. And so and there was an intermission, and in the intermission we got to hang out with him. And so we're standing there, and my girlfriend's there, and I'm there, and he's there. And I said, hey, let me ask you a question. And I basically explained to him the story. I go, here's what was happening. Here's what I did to change it. Do you agree that what I did to change it is what actually changed the dynamic? And he was, well, of course, like, yeah, absolutely, blah, blah, blah. And he went into a whole explanation and blah, blah, blah. She just stood there with the look on her face like, this is the biggest bunch of BS I've ever heard. And we talked about it afterwards, and she adamantly denied that could possibly have been the reason why things shifted. But you know what she didn't deny? That things actually shifted.
I love it. Absolutely. Absolutely. Look, not everything needs to be said out loud in a relationship.
I know. Well, in that particular moment, I was just like, I was feeling so accomplished that I figured this thing out. I just wanted validation from him
Yeah.
that I was right. I didn't actually need the validation in front of her. I just really wanted the validation personally from him that, yes, you are correct. But she just happened to be there and didn't
Yes.
necessarily like that.
I fully agree with you, what you said about incorporating that polarity. And I think, you know what? I think it's a little bit maybe sometimes women like don't want to feel that you kind of play them or something, like they want to be like, no, I'm in control of everything, and so maybe resistant to this. That's like, honestly, I know in your situation was a different case, but sometimes you don't need your woman to agree. And like we said, I've heard women, for example, so apparently this was the case during the beginning of the feminist movement, that feminists would say that women cannot have vaginal orgasm. It's just something that men have convinced women of because they want penetration. And so you hear this and you see that sometimes women really get it wrong by trying to assert their, individualism and the fact that we're equal. They're actually denying truth, which can hurt them. So I would say to all the men, like, just experiment with these things and see the results. Like you said, she doesn't have to agree with you, but she will see the results.
Yeah, and
Um,
she didn't agree, but that didn't change my course of action.
exactly. Kevin, there's something I also wanted to ask you about. So going back to the conversation we had about, what it means to provide, and the fact that these days, a lot of our dating choices are based on some superficial aspects such as just looks. But there's another thing that I often hear from my men on YouTube, is that they feel that unless they have money, a woman simply is not going to be interested in them. And I'd love to have your thoughts on this. Do you think it's true? To what extent? What is this all about?
Yeah, that is a good question. It is something that I hear as well. It is true to some extent, but it's not as true as a lot of the men think. There are plenty of women out there that are okay with the fact that you don't make a ton of money. However, if you're not making a ton of money, there have to be some other things in place. So the reality is because women don't need the money anymore, it's not necessarily about the money, right? So in other words, a lot of these women, they have their own jobs, they're making plenty of money. Sometimes they're making more money than a lot of men. It's not that they need you to have a bunch of money because they need money. What does the money symbolize? Money symbolizes success. It symbolizes that you have a purpose in life, that you are dedicated to, doing something in the world, right? So this is what I tell men all the time. If you want to show up into a relationship and have no financial resources, that's basically never good. But if you have some financial resources, but you're not a wealthy millionaire, that's okay as long as you have purpose, you have drive, you have direction, you are doing something in the world. Maybe you are absolutely passionate about, I don't know, like working with children, right? Maybe you work, because we all know school teachers are notoriously underpaid. Maybe your passion in the world is working in special education with children or something like that. Maybe you make 40 grand a year at some school, but you love what you do and you're dedicated to doing it and you do it well. That is good enough. You don't need to make a gazillion dollars, but what you do have to have is drive, purpose, dedication, right? That I think is going to be a whole lot more important to her. Now, any woman that is, swiping whichever direction that is, and 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 if she doesn't see a certain salary level she goes by, this is not somebody you want to date anyway. It's like guys always have this whole thing about their penis size and how every woman is looking for a man with a giant penis. Absolutely not true. And believe me, I've got a few friends with really big penises. They'll tell you this is not the case. But
Yes.
the point is, she's not looking for a giant penis. She's looking for a good enough penis attached to a man who knows how to use it lovingly, caringly, and skillfully, right? So it's basically the same thing
Mm.
with the money. She's not looking for you to be a millionaire, but she's looking for you to have some sort of a career, to have some sort of purpose and drive and something that you're working towards. Hopefully, you at least make a little bit of money doing it, right?
So I'm fully with you on this one, and it's when it comes, by the way, to the size of your penis. I have a video about it, and it's crazy how many men still challenge me, and they're like, "No, no, it's not true." I'm like, "Here you have a woman telling you, no, it's not, and you wanna stay true to your story." And yes, it's the same with money. I'll tell you a story. So. Um, I met this guy who like he's really handsome. Imagine Harry Potter being way taller with way more muscles. That's how he looks. So just objectively speaking, very attractive. And we're having a conversation and I kind of liked him. And he said this. He said that yeah, right now like I have so much money because I made like really a lot of money from Bitcoin, so I don't have to work. So I don't know. I'm just kind of like yeah, just living, seeing what's next. Whoa, the polarity, my attraction just dropped to zero. So I don't care if you have a lot of money. If you're lost in life, if you have no, like you said, the passion and the drive and direction, I'm not interested in this because these are the qualities that are attractive. It's not just pure money.
Yeah, those qualities are attractive, and if we kind of sort of boil it down to the why is that attractive, you know, there's this whole idea of providing, right, and this need for the feminine to feel safe. It doesn't matter if he has a lot of money if he's got nothing else going on. He's got no career, no job, no drive. That doesn't make you feel safe. Money comes and money goes, right? So you don't feel safe. So there's an element of you not feeling safe with him because of that. And then there's it's just thoroughly unattractive to be with a man who has no drive. The masculine is, I mean, look at the penis. The penis points, right? It's drive. Look at the symbol for masculine. It's an arrow point. It's like drive. This is what we do, right? So when you're just I'm just kind of hanging out. I don't know. I'll see whatever happens. You've lost that drive, and that is unattractive to women.
Yeah, I'll tell you honestly, as a woman, and I speak also on behalf of, trust me, a lot of my girlfriends, we all agree. Nothing is less attractive than a man who's lost and who's chaotic. Like a man who's just kind of all over the place. You don't know what you should be doing in this life, who you are. Like these type of men are just not attractive. So I tell men that if you are in that place, because it may happen that either, just like things change in your life and you're trying to rediscover yourself. But if you find yourself kind of lost, then you do everything you can to find yourself and find your path. Like that should be your number one priority. You need this to actually feel good as a man in this life. And from that place, you get to attract incredible women, but like you cannot be chaotic. And so I think again, this is all spectrum, right? It's not black and white. It's not like, oh, you don't need to have any money. I would say it depends, also on age. If we're in our 20s, you don't need to be making that much money. But if you're in 30s or 40s, and if you guys want to have a family, you know, we want to be like increasing standards of living. So you do have to be able to contribute, right? So there is definitely also an aspect that some men, if you're a bit older and you're kind of feeling lost and you're not really making money, then it is time probably to also look at your life and like, okay, where do I need to step up? Because like you said, a woman doesn't need you to be a millionaire, but we do need you at a certain age. Like the success that you have says a lot about you as a human being, right? Like, can I trust you? Do you know how to figure things out? I have it often in our industry. I know a lot of coaches. I'm 38, and I have a lot of like, girlfriends, my age, trying to be a coach, and they ask me, "Oh, how do you do business?" And I tell them, well, that's how you do business. Like, you have to show up. You have to put in some effort. And they're like, oh, that's so much work. And then I see women at 38 who don't have steady income. That is not okay. Like, that is not okay for neither. Like we have to, it's like you have to have your shit together.
Yeah, absolutely. I have this conversation all the time with people. I imagine the community you hang out with is somewhat similar to the one that I've hung out with a lot around here. And you see this from a lot of people. They have no structure in their life, they have no direction, no drive. They just kind of flounder around and then they wonder why. You know, you hear this a lot in the entrepreneurial space. It's like, well, I don't really want to put in a lot of time or effort, or I don't really want to invest a lot of money until my business is really successful and making money. And it's like, do you have any idea what you just said? Your business is not going to make any money until you put in the time, the effort, the energy, and the financial investments, right? So you got to put it in up front. And the same thing goes with your relationship, by the way. You've got to put the work in up front if you want anything to happen. And so, yeah, I think it's unattractive to both men and women when the other person is kind of lost and floundering and can't seem to figure out how to get their act together. And I love the point you made also about for men. Because I have a good friend who's been kind of stuck in this space for a while, where he transitioned out of his relationship and he's been wanting to get a new one, but he's been in this sort of lost, floundering around space. And he keeps saying, I don't understand why I can't meet women. I said, the number one thing you have to do is get your life back in order, right? Figure out what it is you want to do and start putting effort into it and get something going. Get a drive, a purpose, a direction going first. And then you will see the women will just gravitate towards you rather than you always trying to, I don't understand why I can't meet people, I can't find anyone. Yeah, because that exactly what you said. They sense that chaotic, disorganized, all over the place energy and they want to run in the opposite direction.
Yes, and Kevin, I want to go back to something that you said that I really appreciate, which is about effort and investing. And you said this in the story of how you decided to be more in charge with sex, and as a consequence, you were having a better experience. And you said, even if I didn't feel like it, even if I was tired, I'm gonna step up, be in charge, be on top, right? And one of the common things that I read online is that, oh, it's too much effort. And and honestly, like, I do hear this a lot, and I understand, because if we feel like, oh, I've done so much and I'm not getting results, why bother? You're asking too much, right? It's a bit, if I tried investing money and I always lost the money, I would be like, I don't want to invest. If my business was very unsuccessful, why would I want to invest in it? But it is an important mental switch, right? Because like you said, with business, unless I first invest in business, I'm not going to have a good business. And it's something that I see, that men are reluctant to invest time, and even like learning about women. It's like, oh, it's too much work, who has time for like a 30-minute foreplay, etc. Not realizing that, like any investment, right, for you to get the returns on investment, you have to invest. You're not going to get the benefits unless you invest. It's like, it's very simple. If you put $1,000 in like a whatever trust fund or something, potentially you can get some extra money from this. But if you don't put that $1,000 in, you're not going to get any extra money from that. How do you feel about this? Like, have you seen this also as a
Oh,
common
yeah.
issue?
I've seen it a lot. I've really seen it a lot. This whole like it's a lot of work thing. I get comments on YouTube all the time. I'll make a great video about some skill that will really help you relate with your woman, and then I'll get inevitably at least a couple of, that's so much work. And I just want to say to these people, hello, is this your first day on Earth? Life is a lot of work. It just is. That is the nature of our experience. And furthermore, not only is life a lot of work, but men, you have to realize that as the male of the species, that's literally our job. We're the worker bees. That is literally our job. This is what it means to be the provider. It is literally our job to do the hard work. That's why we were made bigger and stronger. It was to do the hard work. It's so I say this to men all the time. I go, I don't necessarily care if you like it or not. It's literally your job. It's your role. So you have a choice. Your choice is you can fight against it, right? And say, I don't like this and I don't want to do this and constantly fight against it. Or you can learn to accept it and embrace it and see it for the beautiful thing that it actually is. Because when you can provide for your woman, it not only does it light her up, not only does it allow her to relax into her feminine, when she does that, she will then return to you 10, 100x whatever it is you put in different ways, right? In ways that will really improve the quality of your life. So, you just got to get over the fact that, yeah, it's going to take work. And like you said, anything in life, doesn't matter what it is, that is quality and worthwhile is going to take work.
Thank you so much for sharing this. I want to share a quick story that's not about dating, but for me, I bring it back anytime I need to be reminded that yes, it is hard work for anything. So I met this guy, and he had lost 20 kilos, I think in 2 years. Massive transformation, or maybe even more than 20, but like he was properly like, I think even maybe obese at this point. And when I met him, he looked amazing, great body, etc. And I asked him, so how was it? And he looks at me, he says, Magda, it was really, really hard. And I love that because I think we're so bombarded by all the sales messages when like, do this effortlessly without sacrificing anything, you're going to get these results. And I think as our generation, I do think we're very entitled. I think we were raised believing that I'm special and I just deserve everything I desire just because I'm special. And I like, we do not have the value of hard work like our, especially grandparents do. We kind of lost it. And it's exactly this. We expect that relationship is going to happen, that women, men are going to like me and I don't have to do anything. And that's what he said. It's like, you hear the stories that losing weight, oh, it can be easy. It's like, no, it was fucking difficult.
It's
It
the
was really hard.
byproduct of the everybody gets a trophy society,
Yes,
right?
yes,
When I
exactly.
was a kid, if you didn't win, you didn't get a trophy, and you felt bad about it. You want to work harder in order to get that trophy, right? But and years later, it was like, oh, you participated, you get a trophy, right? It's like even if you sat on the bench the entire time. So, life is hard. Like I don't know what to tell people other than life is hard, right? And life requires work. And if you don't want to do that work, you're just going to suffer. You're going to suffer. So now you have a choice. You can suffer through doing the hard work and then enjoy the benefit of that hard work, or you can suffer not doing the hard work and also not getting the benefit.
Kevin, do you watch UFC?
Yes, I used to watch it a lot. I don't watch it as much anymore. I am a martial artist myself, so I used to watch it a lot because I love martial arts. But why do you ask?
I want to bring this up to the conversation about trophy. You just get trophy for participating, like the switch. So my ex was into UFC, and so he really wanted me to watch it with him. And my first, I always say game, just a fight. My first fight that I watched, the guy loses, and I feel so sorry for him. Like I feel pity for this guy. And I started asking other guys watching this, and I said, how do you feel about the guy who lost? Because, like me as a woman, a modern woman, oh, poor baby, right? Exactly what you were discussing. And they're like, no, this is a test for a man. And you go in knowing that basically 50-50 chance you're going to be a winner or a loser. And I do agree with what you said. I feel, I basically believe it's actually good for everyone, men and women, to build this resilience, but definitely for men, go into battles. Like, do not shy away from a battle in your life, not just in dating, but everywhere. Knowing that you may win and you may also lose, and you have to be okay losing. And don't allow the loss to convince you that you're worthless and give up on the fight. Take it as a motivation to get better. I honestly think like UFC in that regards was a great lesson for me. Like if we want to read it this way, it's exactly, you can be a winner or a loser, but you keep going. That's what life is about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in martial arts, this is one of the reasons why I'm such a big proponent of martial arts for men because it teaches you this lesson. Whether or not you ever make it to the UFC and compete, there's one thing that you will learn pretty quickly when you start training in a dojo with other men, is that there will always be somebody else that can kick your ass, right? Like,
And be humble with this. Yes.
yeah. So it And it's not just, oh, you'll never be the top dog. That's not the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is that it does teach you humbleness, but it also teaches you the value and the ethic of hard work and striving to always be that best, knowing that there are significant odds stacked up against you, right? And it does do something. It molds you to an extent, but it also tempers you. Like when we're talking about heat treating metal, right? We expose it to heat and cool it down, and that tempers it. It makes it stronger, right? And that's what these types of experiences and things do, because you're not going to go into martial arts and have it easy. You're just not. You're going to get hurt a lot.
I tried jujitsu once, I confirm.
Oh yeah.
Kevin, where can people find you if they want to learn more about you or work with you?
The best place is to start with my website, which is kevinandceline.com. That is kevinceline.com. That is the hub for all of my stuff. So from there, you can find my podcast, which is the Love Lab Podcast, which is also available on YouTube, on my own YouTube channel, which is Kevin and Celine. It's also available on all major podcast platforms. From my website, you can also find links to powerandmastery.com, which is my online courses for men, the men's sexual mastery. There's actually 3 courses there: one to help you with erectile dysfunction, one to help you with premature ejaculation, and then the sexual mastery program that covers both of those and then a whole lot more, all of your sort of mastery level skills. So you can find everything there. You can also figure out how to work with me as a coach. And yeah, that's kind of the one-stop shop.
So you guys are gonna see all the links are in the description of this video. So do check Kevin out and totally check his podcast, especially our episode. I'm not sure if it's already out, but at this point, but do check it out. We have a great conversation there as well. And Kevin, thank you so much. I really appreciate you jumping on the call and sharing your wisdom, sharing your tips. I really have so much admiration and love for people doing this work, trying to help others have better relationships, better intimate life. I honestly believe we desperately need this, and we need the right people to offer this guidance. And I deeply believe that you are one such person. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I completely agree. And thanks for having me on. It was a pleasure to be here.